Hi friends, Rusty back here at Meteo Mundo. We are your home for Caribbean weather, and it's nice to see you for this latest video. I hope things are well. I've got the latest information on our disturbance in the Northwest Caribbean through the Gulf. The Sahara dust is going to be a big factor into our forecast, and we'll look ahead to any tropical areas of interest as we push to the beginning of the start of hurricane season. As always, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments section below what's been happening in your area. Of course, a lot of information with these new updated daily forecast videos. All the impactful weather scrolling at the bottom of your screen, your 5-day forecast for over 45 areas, the highs and the lows, the chance for some rain, and for a lot of our western areas, that is going to be a significant chance for some rain. That's where I want to start this video. We have our broad disturbance. Nothing has tried to get more organized today, which is great news. But this is rich, deep tropical moisture spreading in from low latitudes all the way through the northern Gulf Coast states, beginning to interact with a cold front in the United States Southeast. And now you have yourself the opportunity for some significant rainfall over the next couple of days. I don't expect this system to develop tropically, but if it stays broad and sloppy like I expect it to, there's going to be other problems to have to contend with in the form of significant areas of flooding rain. And we're really beginning to see that break out right now through portions of the Yucatan. Again, there's a trough. It's just general troughiness, general broad areas of low pressure, but again, nothing that's trying to deepen at the surface. But we looked at the yesterday's video where we had 60+ mile-an-hour winds in the Gulf. These, marine conditions are extreme, and now we're starting to see this moisture begin to connect in with our front, and so we're going to get tremendous amounts of rainfall with a slow push off towards the east, and everywhere east of that has a brisk southerly flow. So these areas are inundated with rain right now, and it's only going to get worse. Places like Merida and Campeche, Cancun and Cozumel, Tulum, you'll see at the bottom of the screen that there are flood warnings in effect right now for a good portion of the Yucatan. Other areas, including Costa Rica and Panama, also under some kind of flood advisories. 2, 3, 4 inches plus for rain daily, maybe more than 100 millimeters in a lot of spots. And the rain continues to break out over portions of Honduras and Nicaragua, Belize and Guatemala. I'll put on the lightning strikes for you guys just so you know that it's not just tropical moisture as far as downpours. There's some good embedded thunderstorm activity as well. Now, all of this will continue to spread off towards the east, and so the next area of concern is going to end up being Florida and the Bahamas. We're already starting to see some heavier thunderstorms develop here, and if you don't think that we could see some flooding rain here, portions of Central Florida yesterday had over 5 inches of rain near Daytona Beach. It's isolated. It's concentrated, but that's the moisture content in the atmosphere. And as this tropical moisture plume interacts with our front, we're just going to continue to break out additional heavy showers and storms, especially for southern Florida, Cuba, and then eventually in towards the northern Bahamas. So we're already starting to see this rain break out right now. I'm going to bring on the live radar data out of this area. I'm going to drop off just very quickly the satellite data so you guys can clearly see that. So here's what it looks like rainfall right now. A little bit nearer where we have our broad area of low pressure in the western Atlantic, but basically near the front. And then as that moisture is streaming in and beginning to interact with the cold front, that's where we're really starting to see the scattered showers and thunderstorms break out. This will continue to impact places like Orlando, Tampa, but especially down towards Fort Lauderdale, Miami, and the central and the northern sides of the Bahamas, where rain is getting much more widespread this evening across portions of the northwest Bahamas, like Walker's Key, Freeport, Lucaya, in the Grand Bahama area, the Abacos, Bimini, showers and storms over Andros. This will spread towards Nassau, New Providence, and the Eleuthera area, and eventually all this is just going to continue to kick in over Cuba and the central Bahamas as well. So these are the areas that I have the most concern for the widespread flooding rains. The Yucatan could get more than a foot of rain in some spots. Cuba about 6 to 12 inches, mainly on the western side of the island, but that doesn't involve Havana as well. South Florida, Miami area, 4 to 7 inches of rain. And again, some spots could get the lower values in a daily basis. Hopefully not more than one day, but 3, 4, 5 inches of rain in one location one day, not out of the question. The northern Bahamas, the central Bahamas, likely to see about 3 to 6 inches in totality out of this. So again, not concerned about this becoming a tropical system per se, but the amount of moisture associated with it is going to be a problem. And this is not going anywhere anytime soon. The other thing is it's going to continue to kick up the winds. Again, we looked at yesterday, we had wind gusts that were over 60 miles an hour. I can't rule out some damaging winds being produced out of this for these same areas. So even if you live in Florida, be aware that the thunderstorms are going to be coming along with some really wind-driven activity, which could get to the potential damaging side. 50 to 60 mile an hour winds are not out of the question. Now, the interesting thing is, of course, you have the haves, and then you have the have-nots, and that is the central and the eastern sides of the Caribbean with the layer of Saharan dust that's going to be moving in, and it's working its way in right now. This is what all of the red represents, but there's even more Saharan dust on the way. Very dry air will entrain itself into the forecast over the next several days, making things much drier, making things more humid outside, and for respiratory sufferers, it's going to be an issue. So that is the next weather headline for us here, the significant Saharan dust. And I'm going to get back to the forecast of that tropical disturbance coming up, but I want to relay what's going to be happening here. We're going to have winds 20, 25, 30 miles an hour. We've seen that the small craft advisories have relaxed a little bit. Not as much of an issue here. I'll throw on the visible satellite imagery. We'll get a couple of passing showers, Antigua, Barbuda, St. Kitts and Nevis, the Virgin Islands, portions of Puerto Rico. I'm not expecting any widespread showers though, and rain chances are only going to be going down as we move through the weekend and early next week. Maybe a scattered shower over Guadeloupe, Dominica, and Martinique. It's not a bad boating forecast the next couple of days. Some elevated sea conditions, and you'll find that information again scrolling at the bottom, but not as much as what we had actually most of the week. Still mainly dry. Trinidad and Tobago, most of you guys have been sending me photos and emailing me or putting comments here in the video saying, Rusty, we're so dry, we could use some rain. I know the ABC Islands could use a little bit in the way of some lighter winds. 30, 40 mile an hour winds again for today, kicking up some sea conditions, especially in Curacao and Aruba. Scattered showers are breaking back out over the Dominican Republic. Still some areas with some flood advisories. Locally heavy downpours, 2 to 3 inches of rain on a daily basis through tomorrow, and then they'll begin to dry out. Beginning to see a couple of showers trying to get going over Jamaica, but this is an area that is not going to get a lot of rain. We still have a large wave and strong wind advisory, and we'll look at the marine interest coming up in just a second, but Cayman Islands, Jamaica will eventually get dry as well. Southeast Bahamas and Turks and Caicos likely to not get the heavier showers the central or the northern sides of the Bahamas are going to see. So let me show you guys some of these photos, and I appreciate you guys sending them into mymetiomundo@gmail.com. This is a dusty, hazy St. Croix from Isabel Cerny, and this kind of sky is very common across all of the Eastern Caribbean and then moving into the Central Caribbean. So I appreciate Isabel sending that photo in. And how about the hazy, dusty sky from St. Elizabeth, Jamaica? So from St. Croix in the Virgin Islands all the way west towards Jamaica, you guys are getting into some hazy conditions, and it's only going to get worse. This Saharan dust is really just beginning to move in. Here comes the second big plume over the weekend. Those brighter colors are higher concentrations of dust, and eventually it works its way all the way into the Northwest Caribbean, begins to interact with the moisture from our tropical disturbance, and will start to bring in some drier air to the Turks and Caicos, to Cuba, continuing the drier air over Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, and probably ingesting a little bit of drier air on the southeast side of that tropical disturbance to begin as we head towards midweek to undercut some of the potential rainfall there. So friends, as we get into the forecast part of this, I do appreciate guys taking a quick second, hit that subscribe button for me. Again, thank you for liking the video. I appreciate the members of the channel. If you're a Team MM member, you get access to exclusive member short videos. You want to become a member of the channel, you can find information down there. I appreciate all of that support. Going to switch over to the marine forecast over the next couple days. So for my boaters, you guys can keep an eye on what I expect to be happening with the marine interests. Moving on, our next headline is going to be the tropical disturbance forecast. So what do I expect to happen from that broad area that's kind of situating itself right now? Well, let's get into it. We're going to start off with the actual spin in the atmosphere, right? I showed you guys this yesterday as well. So that's going to take 1 second to loop up real quickly, and then we'll get into that. What this product is going to show you, again, is a composite of the lower levels of the atmosphere to see if we have any broad areas of spin. The good news is that's what it's going to remain. It's going to remain quite broad in the Northwest Caribbean and the Gulf. So there's no signs right now in the models that what we're seeing presently is going to try and become a tropical system. I don't think we're going to get Arthur out of this. There's a couple of variables we'll talk about for midweek in the western side of our area, but in the short term, this is a sloppy rainmaker with big-time flooding potential. Now, as our front stalls off the United States East Coast, you can see that spin up towards the mid-Atlantic states in New England. That's more of a classic subtropical potential, but more than likely that's going to be mid and upper level spin. It could bring some nasty weather to Bermuda and bring gale conditions up the eastern seaboard of the United States, but likely too far north, too cold. You see the water temperatures at your bottom of your screen. You got to get down to pretty south latitudes to have, temperatures above 80 degrees Fahrenheit that could really support tropical development. Now, the Gulf is bathwater, and that's an area that we'll have to continue to be certainly interested in as we move into the beginning of June. All right, so let me show you what the rainfall is going to look like with this. I'm going to switch over to the reflectivity product, and then we're going to look at the models and then how much rain we get out of this. Clearly, you've got several areas of heavy rainfall along our frontal boundary and where the moisture is still coming in from Central America and the monsoon trough. By the way, of course, the Pacific season is trying to get started and activated, and it's all based off what we're seeing right now in Central America as pieces of energy move off to the west. The question is just how much more energy gets shoved to the north, meaning how much more active weather are we going to see. That doesn't necessarily mean tropical development, especially late May, early June, but it does mean rainfall. And you can clearly see as I spin this product through the next week, how wet it could continue to be. We could continue to see heavier rainfall over Cancun, Cozumel, not great for the beach forecast. Places like Belize and the Bay Islands, Roatan, Utila, Guanaja, an area likely to be inundated in rain the next several days. Scattered showers over central and the western sides of Cuba. This translates east towards portions of South Florida and the Bahamas. This is an area where I think the rainfall totals potentially have come down slightly, but still significant rain, and Florida has been a drought-stricken state. They can actually use some of this rain if they can avoid the flooding. But anywhere east of there is likely to stay quite dry with a Saharan dust layer that's going to be moving through. So now let's take a look at the tropical models in association with what's happening in the Southern Gulf and the Northwest Caribbean. This is going to be the European AI version of the model, taking you through the next week. It's still a clean run. Again, you see little swings of low pressure coming off the United States East Coast, but nothing tries to get surface-based in our areas off towards the west. So just like yesterday, it's a clean run. That's good news. GFS model, AI version, same way. About the same scenario, really, where it could spin up a mid or upper level circulation and potentially become surface-based, but moving very quickly off the U.S. East Coast if it does. But through next weekend, we're looking pretty darn good. So let's talk about that rainfall, right? I mentioned the areas that could get more than 6 inches of rain. Watch the European model fill in. It's going to take a little bit of time, but once we interact the front and the surface moisture, look at all of that spread up. Even places along the northern Gulf Coast of the United States could get more than 6 inches of rain. Places like Mobile and Tallahassee and Pensacola, Florida. But for the central sides of Central America and the Yucatan, that's a lot of rain, guys. That's a lot of rain in some spots. There's your drier Saharan dust. There's the front that gets as far south as probably New Providence and Eleuthera for the most part. I can show you what it looks like here on the GFS model just as an indication. Now again, with this model, we can actually query the actual numbers here. So just to kind of give you an idea, I do think the numbers are lower than what they could be, but a few inches of rain possible here. Same situation for Grand Bahama, 3 inches, but we could get rounds of heavier rain that the models can't quite pick up on, and we could double those totals. Same situation across Cuba. There's some of your bullseyes. You get out into the south central Gulf where we could have more than 8 inches of rain, and I am concerned about some additional heavier rainfall along the Caribbean coastline of Quintana Roo, back towards Belize and portions of the Bay Islands, and then you follow that down with excessive rainfall likely in portions of Costa Rica and Panama, whereas most of places like Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the Antilles are likely to continue to stay dry. So back over to our weather headlines here. That's the disturbance forecast. Is there anything to start hurricane season that I'm concerned about? It's going to be our next and last weather headline to look at for us here. And the answer is, in the short term, no. However, a couple of interesting scenarios could crop up. I mentioned that the Pacific season is getting kicked off. We have our first cherry of the Pacific season moving off towards the west. But as this moisture and as this activity sits over Central America, we're going to start to see pieces of energy develop off of this. Most of the models carry that energy in the core of it west into the Eastern Pacific. But every so often, some of the models, including the European, want to lift it north, either to the Northwest Caribbean or the western side of the Gulf. Now, typically, we have shear in the Gulf and we have ridge of high pressure that elongates itself into the Eastern Gulf to push these storms back out towards the west. So the question is, can they get going? And if they do, where would they go? Well, showing you the European model surface pressure. So again, I showed you the AI version, but this is our ensemble products based off of the deterministic model of the European. And if you look towards the end of next week, you're going to see a little bit more activity, some in the Western Gulf, mainly in the Pacific, and a little bit more along the eastern seaboard of the United States. Nothing concerns me out of any of this so far, right? We could still have general troughing out in the western side of the Gulf, still could have some active weather there, but you can clearly see that the European model wants to develop systems in the East Pacific and move them west. But the far west or southwest Gulf is the only area that I think we're going to have to monitor as we get to the start of the Atlantic hurricane season. Now, for my boaters, significant wave heights. It's going to be an issue for us here. I'm going to bring back on those marine forecasts because places like Bermuda, it's going to get nasty with that front. Look for elevated sea conditions in many locations that correspond to where we have the rain and the wind. It's not a bad forecast for the Antilles, including the Leeward and the Windward Islands. Looking pretty good for the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. Jamaica still has the large wave and strong wind advisories. I expect additional heavier seas to develop in the Northwest Caribbean and then back through the Bahamas in the short term. But behind this, everything eventually has to clear out, and that will as we get towards the beginning of the week after this. So give it about 10, 11 days, and things should be a little bit quieter. So following up on what I expect one more time, again, back out to the broad perspective. Moisture plume will continue to develop and spread. It's going to be a slow mover because this is going to stay a sloppy system. This is going to be a very elongated area of heavy rain, but also some thunderstorm activity. So convective nature, which means locally heavy downpours are likely out of this. If I bring back on the amount of lightning strikes that we're seeing right now, it's a pretty impressive amount in some spots here, right? Let's loop that back up for you guys real quick. Towards the afternoon hours here, watch those lightning counters go up. So about 500 lightning strikes in this view. So convective nature means locally heavier downpours. Flooding is already developing in the Yucatan, Cuba, and that could happen over Florida and the northwest side of the Bahamas as well. Friends, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for making Meteo Mundo a part of your daily routine. Again, let me know in the comments section below if you have a question about the forecast. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. You guys have a great rest of your day. You know I'm monitoring the situation, and I'll see you soon with the latest forecast. Until then, take care.